Hello and welcome to The Drum. I'm Annabelle Crabb. Tonight we bring you a special edition of The Drum, looking at the role of new media in this chaotic year. Has Twitter changed the world? Our panel tonight are Tweeters All. Chas Licciardello from The Chaser, blogger and senior law lecturer at Queensland University of Technology, Peter Black, and in Canberra, political correspondent with Radio 2UE and soon to become the ABC's new social media plaything, Latika Bourke. Welcome. Well,
thanks, Annabelle.
The news cycle is speeding up. Even the past 5 years has seen a complete revolution in the way news organisations handle breaking news. 6 o'clock exclusives are now a rarity as journalists rush to get their scoops online as fast as possible. Paradoxically, it turns Twitter into something like an old-fashioned news ticker, offering up electrifying snippets like this one from the ABC's Chris Uhlmann on June the 23rd this year. It reads, Kevin Rudd's leadership is under siege tonight from some of the Labor Party's most influential warlords. Watch ABC News now. Now, Peter Black, this is sort of Twitter acting as a kind of a pimping agent, isn't it? Kind of sending viewers the way of established media outlets.
Yeah, in this instance, Twitter was being used as a conduit, more or less, to just let the people on Twitter know that there was some breaking news and that if they wanted to know more, then they could go to ABC News. And Twitter's often used like that, not just with turn on the TV or turn on the radio, but also here's a link, which will then give you more information if you're interested in it.
And I think that about 25% of tweets that go out contain links, don't they? Which seems to be one of the important ways that that medium actually circulates information.
That's right. I mean, it wasn't one of the early things that Twitter was known for. It was very much, you know, what's happening now sort of information, like what are you having for lunch, the standard sort of cliche. But it has increasingly been to spread news and information like that, and so you do see little links, as well as to links to pictures and videos, and most of the Twitter clients and apps now allow you to do that as well.
Well, when the ballot did happen on June the 24th, news of the result was broken on Twitter by the Australian's journalist in Canberra, Samantha Maiden, in this message which shows that you don't need too many words to get the point across. It's Julia, no ballot. Hash spill. Now, Latika Bourke, if I can bring you in, you were in Sydney being named as Walkley Young Journalist of the Year on the night the challenge happened, and you jumped straight into a car and headed for Canberra, missing the party in the process. But talk to us about what role social media played in the events of the ensuing 24 hours when you were heavily on the tweet, as I recall.
Yeah, Annabelle, look, I think the Spillard, as we referred to it on Twitter, Gillard Spill, was actually a less better example of how social media has really changed the political landscape and the reporting of it. The best one, I think, was the Malcolm Turnbull spill, and you had 2 weeks of absolute feeding frenzy within the Liberal Party. They were just tearing themselves apart, and a great deal of it was being played live out on Twitter via all these journalists. So you had this great water cooler of gossip, some of it fact, some of it hearsay, and it was our job to work out what was worth chasing up and what wasn't. And the same thing kind of happened with the Spiller. The only problem was she did the job so quickly there was no time for fun.
Well, one of the funny things about watching those events unfold through the medium of Twitter is that the way that journalism used to work is that you would kind of hear all these rumours during the day and so you get bum steers and accurate steers, and by the end of the day or by the time your deadline came around, you'd kind of winnowed out a rough version of what was closest to the truth. I mean, one of the dangers with live broadcast of all this stuff is that you kind of get the dodgy material as well as the accurate material. Is there a danger in that, do you think, Chas?
Oh no, there definitely is. It's there was actually a great example of it just the other day when there's a tweeter called who calls himself Bronwyn Bishop, who but it's not Bronwyn Bishop, but they call themselves Bronwyn Bishop.
The real Bronwyn Bishop is twice the man he is.
Yes. and this person tweets something slightly exaggerated upon which Bronwyn Bishop would actually say, and he or her, we don't know, tweeted something about WikiLeaks that was a bit wild, and there were literally hundreds of retweets. We're talking tens of thousands of people reading what this guy's saying, thinking it's Bronwyn Bishop.
Because the diabolical thing about that particular account is that if you go back through the old messages, it looks just enough like Bronwyn Bishop, but it's not crazy stuff. So, you could think that it was actually Bronwyn Bishop.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the problem is that by the time the good guys come along and two of whom are sitting in front of me at the moment, to actually say this isn't true. It's 6 hours later and everyone thinks it's true. The digital locusts have just moved on to another target.
I love those locusts. It's not all about reporting what's just happened, of course. Sometimes social media can actually make things happen. And Twitter today, in fact, released a top 10 list of the most powerful tweets of the year. Number 1 went to the Today Show anchor Ann Curry in the United States, who noticed a tweet from Médecins Sans Frontières during the Haiti earthquake disaster. Now, the aid organisation complained it was unable to get US Air Force clearance to land its plane at the airfield. And Curry sent this tweet. And within an hour, clearance was granted. She says, "Find a way to let Doctors Without Border planes land." Chaz, how do you reckon social media has influenced the way that the world deals with disasters in particular?
Well, I think it's really helped raise money more than anything else. Like, for instance, the Pakistan floods was an issue that wasn't covered a huge amount in the Australian media, but on Twitter there were endless appeals to raise money, and I think it was the same in America as well. And I think Twitter's a good medium to make a small amount of difference in a very easy way. And so it's very easy just to click a link and donate $10. And whereas it used to be a lot harder to do that kind of thing. And I think that's probably the main way it's probably revolutionised things.
And when that Qantas jet had an incident quite recently, it was extraordinary to see that the first news of that and even the first pictures went out via Twitter, didn't they? Latika, I can hear you.
Yeah, I actually think, Annabelle, that was one of the worst examples of where live broadcasting and reporting on Twitter goes wrong, because so many people got it wrong. So many people thought that a Qantas plane had gone down, and several major outlets were reporting that a Qantas plane had crashed. Now, what people were seeing was anything that happens in a newsroom within an hour. And for me, working in radio, it's between the last hourly news to the next one. That type of stuff happens. Did it happen? Did it not? We're trying to work it out. Now, all of this is being played out on Twitter because people expect us to have the answers when something big is happening. In that case, a lot of people got it wrong, and it was a real kind of wake-up call for people that if you do want to see the sausage making, not that I'd ever defend putting faulty facts out there, if you do want to see the sausage making, sometimes it's actually not good to see.
Yeah, you get rid of the gristle, don't you?
And I was going to say,
You do.
On that note, I actually think Twitter's made journalists more important than ever for exactly that reason. And there was a great example recently, again, with WikiLeaks, when there was a rumour going around that Julian Assange had been knocked off the Times Man of the Year list. And the people were arguing, is it true, is it not true? And what I noticed was everyone kept on tweeting to Mark Colvin, asking him. And I was thinking, why would Mark Colvin know? But Mark Colvin's a guy that everyone trusts to know what he's talking about. So when you have someone who can trust, like a journalist, I think they become more important than ever to be a referee.
Well, the perils of social media became even more evident in 2010. Twitter can be a tool for good, but it can also get you into a spot of bother, as some of in the Twitterverse discovered this year. A simple tweet can see you threatened with defamation, forced to publicly apologise for a slip of the keystroke, or even facing the sack. CNN Middle East reporter Octavia Nasser got the sack over this tweet. Sad to hear of the passing of Syed Mohammed Hussein Fadlallah, one of Hezbollah's giants I respect a lot. Is the rule here, Peter, to make sure that you remember the context in which your comments will be read?
Yeah, I think there's two things to really remember. The first, obviously, is that no matter who you are on Twitter, people are reading. And so you do actually need to be careful with what you're saying, no matter, how innocuous you think it might be. The second thing, which I think is a real challenge for people on Twitter and also for journalists and other people following Twitter, is that context is important. And it is often hard to get the context of a particular individual or a particular tweet without having had a look at the whole stream. And we obviously saw that in that situation there, and she ended up in trouble. So I think there's both good and bad and some challenges that come with the nature of the medium there.
And, of course, don't tweet when you're either intoxicated or overexcited. Stephanie Rice, who...
To be honest, as someone who doesn't drink, I love sitting back on a Friday, Saturday night and watching my friends
you're
make fools of themselves.
You're constantly overexcited, Peter, I'm sure. Now, Stephanie Rice, of course, learnt this in a big way when she sent out a tweet in her excitement about the Wallabies' Tri-Nation win over the Springboks. She said, "Suck on that, faggots," which was a rather unfortunate kind of remark. And she was terribly repentant when she realised just exactly what she'd said and the effect that it had on the millions of people who were subsequently treated to a retweetment of her remarks.
Yeah, like I think people just need to understand that you might as well be on TV when you're tweeting, which is why you should never tweet about sick kids with cancer.
We can all draw lessons, Latika.
I like to think of it as my pub Twitter, but I also think you've got to think that you're standing in that pub with a megaphone and there's 10 of your future employers in front of you.
Yeah, well, I mean, you've got, about 20,000 followers, I think, Latika, haven't you? I mean, it's hard to imagine...
I think you've just doubled me, but
have
thank
I?
you.
Oh, right. Look, I'm sure it'll happen overnight. But, you've got to actually think that there are that many people out there listening to what you're saying, don't you?
Yeah, and look, it's really hard sometimes because you as a person can tweet, and you can tweet in your style of humour, you can tweet in your context, you can tweet as though you are talking to a bunch of mates. Trouble is, there's going to be someone out there who doesn't get that joke, and then that's when the trouble starts.
And is the general rule nowadays that you shouldn't send out any tweets that involve Bindi Irwin at all, do you think?
Any which?
Any tweets that involve Bindi Irwin.
Oh... Poor old Catherine Dependent. Yes, no.
Well, that was
Best
kind
not
of
to.
was that an example, do you think, of a kind of an older media finding out the kind of, the rough end of the pineapple as far as Twitter can go?
Yeah, I do think she was judged a little bit harshly for that basis by the more sort of traditional conservative type model, and that sure, perhaps the joke wasn't in the best of taste. I don't think there's much doubt about that. But nonetheless, it still was a joke, and that was pretty clear to everyone. And so the sort of reaction, I think, was a little bit hysterical to that.
She definitely got hit by the lynch mob, but I will say this, that on the night, because I was following her and I was watching it live, just going, oh, OK, I'll avoid that. On the night, she was getting lots of complaints from her followers, in context, reading her tweets and going, that's not on. And she replied with basically rack off. And I think that's a real lesson as well, that you can easily step over the line on Twitter. I've done it many times myself, but use your followers as an example to tell you that that's a red light, and then you apologise and you might delete or you might clarify. But usually your followers are a good way of telling you when you're in a bit of trouble.
So, yeah, I'll second that too, because as a journalist, and I think any profession, Twitter makes you accountable. If you're going to have a public job, these people are your audience and they're telling you sometimes whether this is on or off. And I've had a couple of instances where I've gone, yeah, fair cop, that was probably a bit too much. Sorry, I won't do it again. So look, not a bad thing to do.
We can't get to the end of this particular segment without talking about what we're seeing at the moment, which is the first public instance that I can recall